Hello everyone, and wishing you all a wonderful day. Today, we're traveling to a magical place where clouds don't stay in the sky, they walk on the ground, just like people. But this isn't just a travel story, it's about a man who spent his entire life running, until a little girl and her teddy bear taught him that some journeys aren't about escape, they're about coming home. If you enjoy this story, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss what happens next. The bus left Hanoi while the city was still wrapped in the velvet darkness of pre-dawn. Street lamps flickered like dying stars along the empty boulevards, and the only sounds were the rumble of the engine and the distant barking of dogs greeting an invisible morning. Little Ly had fallen asleep before they even crossed the Red River Bridge. Her head rested against her mother's shoulder, rising and falling with each gentle breath. In her arms, she clutched a worn teddy bear, a companion that had traveled with her since she was barely old enough to walk. The bear's button eyes had seen better days, one hanging by a thread, but to Ly it was the most precious thing in the world. James sat in the front seat, his eyes fixed on the road ahead. But every few minutes he would turn around, just slightly, just enough to see them both, the one who had changed his life and the child who was teaching him what it meant to belong. He didn't know exactly when this habit had started, this need to confirm they were still there, still real. Perhaps it was the years of running, the constant fear of losing everything. Or perhaps it was simply love, expressing itself in the only language he knew: vigilance. The highway stretched endlessly before them, cutting through rice paddies that lay sleeping under thin blankets of mist. As the first hints of gray touched the eastern sky, the bus began its ascent into the mountains. The change happened gradually, then all at once. One moment the road was clear, the next white tendrils of fog began curling around the bus like curious spirits. The higher they climbed, the thicker the mist became, until the world outside the windows dissolved into pure, luminous white. Little Ly stirred, her eyes fluttering open. For a moment she seemed confused, caught between dreams and waking. Then she saw the whiteness pressing against the glass, and her eyes widened with wonder. She called out to James, her voice still husky with sleep, asking why everything outside had turned white. James turned around, a soft smile playing at the corners of his lips, and explained that Sa Pa was saying hello to them. Up here, he told her, the clouds don't stay in the sky, they walk on the ground just like people. Ly pressed her face against the cold window, her breath creating small circles of fog on the glass. She asked if she was inside a cloud at that very moment, and James confirmed that she was, but warned her to hold her mother's hand tight, because sometimes the clouds liked to take little girls away. Ly giggled but immediately reached for Tu Diep's hand, squeezing it firmly. Tu Diep smiled, running her fingers through her daughter's tangled hair. Through the reflection in the window, her eyes met James's, and in that brief exchange, something passed between them. Gratitude, perhaps, or something deeper that neither dared to name. Sa Pa welcomed them with a cold that felt different from the city. Not harsh, but gentle, like being embraced by the mountain itself. The air carried a scent that Ly had never encountered before. Pine needles, wood smoke, morning dew on wild grass, and something else, something ancient and clean that seemed to wash away the dust of Hanoi with every breath. When Ly stepped off the bus, she immediately hugged herself, her small body shivering. She exclaimed how cold it was, her teeth already chattering. Before Tu Diep could reach for the bag, James was already kneeling in front of the little girl. He wrapped a woolen scarf around her neck, once, twice, making sure no cold air could sneak in. Then he placed a knitted hat on her head, pulling it down over her ears. He stepped back to admire his work and declared that now she looked like a real mountain girl. Ly looked down at herself, then up at James, her face breaking into a grin so wide it seemed to warm the very air around them. Their homestay sat perched on the hillside like a bird's nest clinging to a cliff. The wooden structure seemed to grow organically from the mountain itself, its dark timber walls weathered by countless seasons. A narrow path of stone steps led up to the entrance, lined with wildflowers that bobbed their colorful heads in the morning breeze. But it was the view that stole their breath. The balcony overlooked the Munghua Valley, a vast tapestry of terraced rice fields that cascaded down the mountainside like giant green stairs carved by ancient gods. And below it all, filling the valley like a silver sea, lay the clouds. Ni ran to the balcony railing, her earlier coldness forgotten, shouting to her mother that their house was higher than the clouds. Tu Diep followed, wrapping her arms around her daughter from behind, saying it was just high enough to watch them. James stood in the doorway, watching them silhouetted against the morning light. In that moment, framed by mountains and mist, they looked like a painting, something beautiful and fragile that he was terrified to touch, terrified to lose. Their first morning adventure took them down to Cat Village. The path was ancient, paved with stones worn smooth by generations of footsteps. On either side, small wooden houses clung to the slope, their roofs dark with moss, their windows glowing with the warm light of cooking fires. Somewhere below, a stream sang its endless song, the sound rising and falling like a lullaby. Ni bounded ahead, her earlier tiredness completely forgotten. She jumped from stone to stone, counting each step aloud, reaching 37, 38, 39. James walked on the outer edge of the path, the side that dropped away into the valley below. It was instinct, the same instinct that made him check the locks twice at night, that made him scan every room for exits. Some habits, born from years of survival, never truly fade. Ni noticed because she always noticed everything. She asked why he always walked on the outside, and James glanced down at her curious face and explained that it was so if she fell, he could catch her first. The little girl considered this for a moment, her brow furrowed in serious thought. Then she nodded, satisfied with the answer, and declared that he should always walk on the outside forever and ever. They continued down the path, past women in traditional indigo clothing carrying bamboo baskets on their backs, past children playing with handmade toys, past old men smoking long pipes and watching the world go by with patient, knowing eyes. At the waterfall, Mi couldn't resist. She reached out her small hand toward the cascade, letting the icy water kiss her fingertips. She jerked her hand back immediately, exclaiming how cold it was, shaking off the droplets. James handed her a small towel, his eyes crinkling with amusement, and told her that the cold makes you remember longer. Ni looked at the waterfall, then back at James, her eyes sparkling, and declared that she would remember Sapa forever and ever. Lunch was served in a tiny restaurant that seemed to be held together by wood, prayers, and the sheer stubbornness of its elderly owner. They sat on low wooden stools around a table scarred by years of use, surrounded by the aroma of grilled fish and mountain herbs. The dishes arrived one by one, stream fish grilled over charcoal until the skin crackled, bamboo rice, sticky rice cooked inside tubes of fresh bamboo, and a mild version of thang ko, a famous highland stew, prepared specially for visitors who weren't ready for its full intensity. Ni picked up the bamboo tube, shaking it like a maraca, asking her mother why the rice was inside a tree. Before Tu Diep could answer, James leaned in with a perfectly serious expression and explained that it was climbing rice, very special. Ni's eyes went round as she asked if rice could really climb, and James nodded solemnly, saying only the bravest rice could do it, and that it trained for years in the mountains. Tu Diep covered her laugh with her hand as Ni stared at her bamboo tube with newfound respect, as if expecting the rice to start climbing at any moment. In the afternoon, they took the cable car to Fansipan, the roof of Indochina. As the cabin lifted off the platform and swung gently into the void, Ni's hand shot out, gripping James's fingers with surprising strength. She asked if they were really flying, and he assured her it was just a little bit, not too high, telling her not to worry. The cabin rose higher, passing through layers of mist, breaking through into brilliant sunshine. Below them, the clouds spread out like an endless white ocean, peaks of other mountains rising from the sea like islands in a dream. Ni pressed her face against the glass, her fear completely forgotten, shouting that she could see the clouds, so many clouds. Tu Diep stood beside James, their shoulders almost touching. She didn't speak, didn't need to. The silence between them was comfortable, filled with something that words would only diminish. She watched James watching Ni, saw the softness in his eyes, the way his whole body seemed to relax in the presence of this child's joy. For so long he had carried the weight of his past, like stones in his pockets, but here, suspended between earth and sky, he seemed lighter somehow, as if the mountain air was slowly lifting those stones away, one by one. Evening brought them to the Sa Pa night market, where the cold mountain air mingled with the warm, smoky aroma of street food. Vendors lined the narrow streets, their stalls glowing with hanging lanterns, their grills sending up fragrant clouds that made mouths water and stomachs growl. James moved through the crowd with purpose, returning with treasures: grilled corn glistening with butter and salt, eggs roasted until the shells cracked and browned, skewers of marinated meat still sizzling from the charcoal. Ni bit into the corn and immediately started blowing, her cheeks puffing out, exclaiming that it was so good but so hot. James laughed, a real laugh, full and unguarded, and said that was Sa Pa's specialty, delicious but requiring patience. They wandered past stalls selling hand-woven textiles, silver jewelry, and embroidered bags. When Ni spotted a small brocade scarf in brilliant reds and blues, her eyes lit up. James bought it without hesitation, kneeling down to wrap it around her neck. Ni spun in a circle, the scarf ends flying out around her, asking if she looked like a Sa Pa person now. Tu Diep pretended to study her critically before declaring she was almost perfect, just needing to learn the Sa Pa accent. Back at the homestay, warmth greeted them, the small heater humming softly, the wooden walls still holding traces of lingering laughter. They changed into warm clothes, and Tu Diep made hot chocolate from packets she had brought from Hanoi, the sweet steam rising in lazy spirals. Ni lay in the middle of the bed, flanked by her mother on one side and James on the other. The ceiling fan spun slowly overhead, casting gentle shadows. Outside, the mountain night pressed against the windows, vast and silent and full of stars. Ni murmured that today had been happy, her eyes already heavy with sleep. James reached over, smoothing the hair back from her forehead, saying he felt the same way. Within minutes, her breathing deepened, her small chest rising and falling in the rhythm of peaceful dreams. James and Tu Diep lay still, listening to the sound of her sleep, neither wanting to break the spell. Tu Diep whispered a thank you, so softly it was almost lost in the darkness. James didn't ask what for, he understood, and in that understanding was everything. They woke before dawn, bundling Ni in layers of warmth before carrying her, still half asleep, to the tea hills where cloud hunters gathered to witness the sunrise. The world was dark and cold, the grass wet with dew, the air sharp enough to make their lungs ache. Other travelers stood in scattered clusters, cameras ready, voices hushed in anticipation. Then it happened. The first rays of sun broke over the eastern peaks, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose. Below them, the sea of clouds began to glow, rolling and shifting like a living thing, and suddenly it seemed as though they were standing on the edge of heaven itself. Ni reached out her small hands toward the golden clouds, declaring that she was catching them. James moved behind them, his arms encircling both mother and daughter, pulling them close against the morning cold. He told them to hold on tight, because clouds move fast. The three of them stood there, wrapped together against the chill, watching the world wake up in colors that no photograph could ever truly capture. The trip didn't fix everything. It didn't erase the past or answer the questions that still lingered in the shadows. It didn't make James whole or heal the wounds he carried beneath his skin. But it gave them something precious, laughter that echoed through mountain valleys, slow walks on ancient paths, simple meals shared in warmth and gratitude. It gave them moments of pure presence, the rare and beautiful experience of being fully alive, fully together, fully here. For Tu Diep, it was confirmation of something she had long suspected, that the man beside her, despite his scars, was capable of extraordinary tenderness. For Ly, it was adventure and wonder, and the simple joy of being loved by people who would walk on the outside of every path just to keep her safe. And for James, it was something he had never experienced before. For the first time in his life, a journey was not an escape, it was a homecoming. James, Tu Diep, and little Ly traveled together to Sapa, beginning a warm, joyful journey filled with misty mountains and quiet healing. As they ride through clouds and winding roads, Ly's curiosity and laughter bring lightness to every moment. They explore Cat Village, walk beside waterfalls, and share simple meals like grilled fish and bamboo rice, turning each stop into a memory. On the Fansipan cable car, Ly's excitement transforms fear into wonder as she sees a sea of clouds below. At night, the family wanders through Sapa's market, enjoying hot street food and playful conversations. Mornings are spent chasing clouds on hilltops, hands held tightly against the cold. The trip becomes more than sightseeing. It is a moment of togetherness, comfort, and belonging, where James realizes this journey is not an escape, but a quiet return to happiness and family.